Oh, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. It took me a long time to get settled down here, all this paraphernalia. So today I was going to talk about the uselessness of meditation. And I was going to be reading some from this book here, Meditation, Now or Never. It's a very helpful book. I strongly recommend it. If you haven't read this book, very strongly recommend reading it. And if you've already read it, it would be very good to read again. It's a really helpful book with a lot of very helpful suggestions and some very subtle and deep teaching in it. I very highly recommend this book. So I will start off talking, reading from Steve's book here. Meditation doesn't only take place when you are seated in a formal meditation posture. It begins the moment you turn your attention to what is taking place right now, right here. Thus, we can bring awareness to any activity, whether we're at work or playing with our children, eating dinner, washing the dishes, or taking out the garbage. Meditation begins now, right here. It can't begin someplace else or at some other time. If you wish to know a mind that is tranquil and clear, sane and peaceful, you must take it up now. If you wish to free yourself from the frantic mind that runs our lives, begin with the intention to be present now. Nobody can bring awareness to your life but you. Meditation is not a self-help program, a way to better ourselves so we can get what we want, nor is it a way to relax before jumping into busyness. It's not something to do once in a while, whenever you happen to feel like it. Instead, meditation is a practice that saturates your life and in time can be brought into every activity. It is the transformation of mind from bondage to freedom. In practicing meditation, we go nowhere other than right here, where we now stand, where we now sit, where we now live and breathe. In meditation, we return to where we already are, this shifting, changing, ever-present now. If you wish to take up meditation, it must be now or never. This is very different than our usual idea when we first hear about meditation. We usually have lots of expectations about what it'll do for us and how it'll improve ourselves. But Steve is pointing to something that's beyond that. We usually think that we're going to get something from meditation, that it will lower our blood pressure, reduce our stress, calm us down, or enhance our concentration. And we tell ourselves, if we practice meditation long enough and in just the right way, it might even bring us to enlightenment. But then Steve says, all of this is delusion. As long as we insist that meditation must have some use or purpose or meaning or fulfill us in certain ways, we fail to understand it. As my teacher and many other teachers before him used to say, meditation is useless. Katagiri Roshi would say this. One of the obstacles we face when we first begin meditation, when we first begin to practice meditation, is our desire to know and reap its benefits. We ask, how can meditation help me? This approach assumes there is something wrong with us that we need to improve. We need to improve ourselves. We practice with this motivation. So when we hear that meditation is useless, that it's not about generating some benefit, we wonder, well, what's the point? If it's not going to generate some benefit, what's the point? Meditation. But if we are to understand meditation or anything at all, we must drop our preconceived ideas, notions, biases, prejudices, and expectations at the door. Instead, let's look at the mind we bring to this practice. If it's a mind of getting somewhere, a mind that seeks peace, calm, enlightenment, or freedom, then it's not the mind of enlightenment. It's a mind that seeks gain and keeps coming up short. A mind of strain and frustration. Here is why meditation is useless. Meditation is finally just to be here, now, not over there in some other place called peace or freedom or enlightenment, not longing for something else, not trying to be or to acquire something new or different, not seeking benefit. This is very helpful teaching, because usually people do take up this practice with the expectation that it's going to bring benefit to them. We need to understand that the wanting mind is the antithesis of the mind of meditation. The mind of meditation is a mind not driven by desires and fears and longings. Indeed, a mind that seeks to rid itself of these painful mental qualities is already the dissatisfied and confused mind from which we seek to free ourselves. When we desire to be desireless, we remain trapped in desire. When we want to be wantless, we bind ourselves with yet another chain. We cannot carry out meditation for any reason other than to be aware. This is the practice of meditation, to be aware here and now for the sake of being aware here and now. We let go of our expectations, let our preconceived ideas about what our life is and what the world is, and just wholeheartedly devote ourselves to living out here and now reality, being aware here and now for the sake of being aware here and now. And when we first hear this, the practice of meditation is to be aware here and now for the sake of being aware here and now. We usually think, well, that means I, separate ego self, me, should do something in particular called being aware. And then in this practice of being aware, I will gain benefit for myself. But once again, this is just to be aware for the sake of being aware. It's not about gaining benefit. And eventually, as you continue with this practice, eventually it can be realized that awareness is your life. Awareness is your true life. Your practice of meditation is not separate ego self, you doing something in particular called being aware. This practice is living as the awareness, the awakeness, that is your true life. Eventually, that can be realized that your true life is this awareness or awakeness. A technical term for this is Buddha nature. But don't grasp ideas of Buddha nature or awareness or awakeness, or don't grasp ideas of what I am pointing to. Just let the ideas that are used in pointing to this situation, just let them be pointers. Don't grasp them and believe that reality corresponds to the ideas that are used to point to it. Usually we want to grasp and get the right idea about what this way of life is, what reality is. We want to get the idea of it. But the ideas that are used that are pointing out what this reality is and that are pointing out what this way of life is, they're just pointers. Don't grasp them and say, yes, this is exactly how it is. I've grasped these wonderful ideas and now I understand. It's by grasping our ideas and beliefs and believing that they correspond to reality that we ignore the actual direct experience, which is awareness or awakeness here and now. This awareness or awakeness is our true life, our true self, our true nature. This doesn't make sense at first. We have to learn to see all of our desires and expectations as the forms of immediate dissatisfaction that they are, and then let them go. If you're carrying out meditation to get something, whether it's tranquility, lower blood pressure, concentration, psychic powers, meaningfulness, enlightenment, or freedom from the desire for enlightenment, you're ignoring here and now. You're ignoring here and now reality. You're caught up in distraction, daydreaming, confusion, and preoccupation. Meditation doesn't mean anything but itself. Full engagement in whatever is going on. It's not about looking for something. To look for meaning or value is to look for a model, a representation, an explanation, a justification for something other than this, what's immediately at hand, what's being directly experienced now. In meditation, we release whatever reasons and justifications we might have and take up this moment with no thought that this moment can or should be something other than just this directly experienced here now reality. We're always experiencing just this here now reality. But we usually overlook this here now reality because we're so caught up in our thinking, our beliefs, our assumptions, and our expectations. So we miss this. It's even though all of us are directly experiencing this reality, we can't help but experience. But we overlook it, we ignore it. If we wish to free ourselves from the mind that's tormented by greed, fear, obsession, and distraction, we must first clearly recognize that it's the same tormented mind we are using to blindly pursue meditation. Since we can't throw away this tormented mind, we can instead begin to honestly look at it with all its expectations, fears, and desires. In meditation, we do not try to forcefully detach ourselves from the feelings, thoughts, and expectations that arise in the mind. We don't try to force anything into or out of the mind. Rather, we let things rise and fall, come and go, and simply be. In meditation, the things you like come up, then pass, then come up again. The same goes for things you fear or dislike. In meditation, we simply see this clearly without trying to grip or control any of it. There will be times in meditation when we're relaxed and times when our minds are agitated. We let both of these states be what they are. We do not seek to attain a relaxed state or to drive out our agitated and distracted mind. That is just more agitation. When we allow the mind to function and just be here now with whatever comes up without grasping, the mind settles on its own. If we stay with meditation, continually being aware, awake here and now, gradually the unhealthy aspects of the mind, including ideas we have about what we're going to get out of meditation, will drop away on their own. And I'd like to go to something that, this is something I wrote years ago for Dharma Field newsletter. This is called The Uselessness of Meditation. As I mentioned, Katagiri Roshi and other teachers before him used to mention that Zazen or meditation is useless. And once Katagiri Roshi was at a large event where many different teachers, both Buddhist teachers and yoga teachers, were offering workshops about meditation. Katagiri Roshi titled his workshop, The Uselessness of Meditation. And hardly anybody showed up for it. Among the few people who did show up were some people who were looking for another workshop but had gotten lost. Very few were interested in the uselessness of meditation, but many people were very interested in the workshops that described how useful meditation was. When Uchiyama Roshi, he's a great modern day Japanese Zen teacher, he died in 1998. When Uchiyama Roshi first listened to a lecture by his teacher, Sawaki Roshi, he heard Sawaki Roshi say, meditation is useless. Uchiyama Roshi had gone to this lecture with a friend. His friend said, I'm glad I found out that meditation is useless. Now I won't waste my time doing something that is useless. That settled the matter for Uchiyama Roshi's friend, and he never returned. But Uchiyama Roshi wondered, why would this great Zen teacher spend his whole life doing something useless? Uchiyama Roshi was deeply intrigued by this question. This question hooked him, and shortly thereafter, he became one of Sawaki Roshi's monks. Sawaki Roshi had a very dynamic, charismatic personality and a huge, booming, rafter-shaking voice. People were very impressed by him. After Uchiyama Roshi had been practicing with Sawaki Roshi for several months, he asked Sawaki Roshi, if I practice meditation, can I develop a great charismatic personality like you? Sawaki Roshi said, no. I have always had a great personality. It's not the result of meditation. And once again, he said, meditation is useless. Uchiyama Roshi didn't completely believe him. He still thought that meditation practice could be used to improve himself, to develop a great personality, and eventually to attain enlightenment. So Uchiyama Roshi practiced very hard. He sat meditation for many hours each day. Each month he would sit a sesshin. This is a meditation retreat. And in some of these sessions, he would sit all day and all night. because of the unfavorable economic situation in Japan at that time. This was during and after World War II. Uchiyama Roshi could not be supported in his life as a monk. He had to support himself with very difficult, exhausting jobs. Also, he did not always have enough to eat because of the food shortages. After several years of this, he didn't notice any improvements, and he began to get very discouraged. With Sawaki Roshi's encouragement, he was able to continue his practice even though he felt discouragement. Uchiyama Roshi described his situation at that time by saying, "My outlook on meditation was really in darkness. I could not do anything about that. All I could do was continue sitting zazen, letting go of my doubts and my thinking." He continued with his efforts to be aware of his direct experience moment after moment, and he allowed his preconceived ideas and assumptions to naturally drop away. One day he heard Sawaki Roshi make a statement about the Buddha way, the way of awakeness. Sawaki Roshi said, "Reality is immeasurable and boundless. Practicing the Buddha way is not about satisfying our desires." And when Uchiyama Roshi heard this, he suddenly deeply realized what the Buddha way was. He clearly realizing that practicing the Buddha way was not about trying to satisfy his desires for egocentric improvement and gain. He said, until then, I have been struggling to improve myself and attain enlightenment. After this experience, I know what true meditation practice was. It took me more than 8 years to realize this. In this experience, Uchiyama Roshi deeply realized who he was. I'm going to be saying some things here. Don't believe any of it. Don't take these ideas that I present and grasp them and say, and believe them. Just see them as pointers. Don't cling to or believe any ideas that are said. Just see them as pointers. So in this experience, Uchiyama Roshi deeply realized who he was. He realized that his true self was awakeness or awareness itself. The true self is the subjectless, objectless awakeness or awareness which is being directly experienced by all beings now. It is the beginningless, endless, boundless, all-inclusive reality of here and now. It is the true self, the true life, the true nature of each being. Each seemingly separate being is a complete manifestation of it. Uchiyama Roshi clearly saw that he and all seemingly separate beings were empty, illusory manifestations of the true self. Whatever we say about the true self, we can't conceptually describe it. We can't pin down what it is. We can't objectively see it. But yet this true self, this directly experienced reality of here and now is always being experienced. It is our life, our true self, our true nature, but usually we ignore it in favor of being caught up in our ideas and beliefs and expectations. The true self, the reality of awakeness or awareness, is sometimes called Buddha or Buddha nature. As Katagiri Roshi and Suzuki Roshi used to say, you are Buddha. And since you are Buddha, you must be Buddha. That is our practice. Our practice is to be the awareness, awakeness, or Buddha nature that is our true life. That is our practice, to really live as our true life. And Uchiyama Roshi clearly realized this. The reality of awakeness or true self or Buddha nature cannot be hidden. It is being directly experienced by all beings now. And everything is a manifestation of it. It can't be hidden. As Suzuki Roshi used to say, when you see something, you hear a sound there, you have everything just as it is. But usually we overlook that actual experience, being caught up in our ideas and beliefs about what the experience is and what our life is. But everything is a manifestation of it. You can't miss this. Nevertheless, it is usually ignored by getting caught up in our beliefs about ourselves, others, and the nature of reality. We respond to situations and act based on these beliefs rather than living a life of awakeness or awareness. This is the ignorance by which the true self is ignored. In the practice of awakeness or awareness, the practice of living as the true self, the ways in which the true self is ignored can eventually be seen through and allowed to naturally drop away by themselves. We can see when we're caught up in our one-sided, limited views, ideas, and beliefs and allow them to naturally drop away. Then we can find appropriate and wholesome ways to take care of ourselves and the seemingly separate beings that we meet. Then we can be truly helpful. The most focused form of this practice is Zazen, or sitting meditation. The term Zazen means sitting meditation. Za means sitting, Zen means meditation. But this practice that we do is not limited to sitting meditation. It can be carried out in all our activities. Though the practice of Zazen, sitting meditation, is the most focused, stable, and peaceful form of this practice. And the Zen teacher Dogen very strongly recommends the practice of Zazen, as do many other Zen teachers as well. But Dogen very strongly emphasizes the importance of this sitting in Zazen. But once again, it's not this practice of being aware here and now for the sake of being aware here and now is not limited to the practice of Zazen. This practice can be carried out in all our activities. Ultimately, we can't completely describe or explain this practice. Whatever we say doesn't completely say it. It's not something that can be packaged within some conceptual description. But the teaching meditation is useless is an expedient teaching to help people avoid practicing in confused, inappropriate ways, to help people see when they are practicing based on their limited ideas and beliefs and allow them to let go of that. When I first started out in Zen practice, I believed I was a separate individual who would use this practice as a technique to improve the separate individual I imagined myself to be. This is a confused practice based on ignorance of the true self. The teaching meditation is useless is meant to be a pointer to help people avoid practicing based on ignorance and confusion, and to help people realize what authentic practice is. I never met Uchiyama Roshi, but his teachings have been very inspirational to me. He was a kind, humble man with a gentle, self-deprecating sense of humor. He frequently told amusing stories about his incompetence and his cowardice. Nevertheless, he was, in my opinion, a great Zen teacher, although he never described himself in that way. With his dedicated Zen practice and through his teachings and writings, he inspired many people to enter into Zen practice. When his teacher Sawaki Roshi hooked him with the teaching, meditation is useless, Sawaki Roshi hooked a very big fish, a great bodhisattva who devoted his life to helping all beings by living a life of awakeness. So Uchiyama Roshi would frequently speak disparagingly about himself in a humorous way. He would say, "I'm very uncoordinated. I never learned how to ride a bike. When I throw a ball, nobody, including me, knows which direction the ball will go." And then he would sometimes tell a story about how he tried to quit smoking and failed. I find that kind of touching. Here's this great Zen master, and he can't even quit smoking. I find that very touching. And anyway, he was. He had this gentle, self-deprecating sense of humor, and was very helpful in pointing out authentic practice. So I just want to emphasize that, as I've been emphasizing all along, that this practice is not about gaining benefit. It's not about gaining benefit. There's a couple of stories I could tell about this. There was a lady that I knew at Tassajara. This is the monastery of the San Francisco Zen Center that I went to years ago. And this lady had been practicing very, very hard for about 5 years. But she was getting very discouraged. And one time she expressed her discouragement by saying, "Nothing comes, nothing comes." She'd been practicing very hard with the expectation that if she practiced meditation diligently, that enlightenment would come to her. But she said with great unhappiness, "Nothing comes." And shortly thereafter, she quit practicing meditation. One time, a student at Zen Center asked Katagiri Roshi, "If I practice Zazen, will enlightenment come to me?" And Katagiri Roshi said, "No. Even if you practice Zazen, enlightenment will never come to you." Enlightenment isn't something apart from you that comes to you. Enlightenment is your life. It's not something that you get to come to you as a result of doing something in particular. Already this awakeness, awareness, peace, freedom are right here now. Wisdom is right here now. It's not something you try to get to come to you. And I've told many times, maybe too many times, a story about R. Crumb, the underground cartoonist. And he was a very famous underground cartoonist back in the late 60s and early 70s. And these were cartoons that were very adult themed. And they were very interesting cartoons. And this particular one was called Meatball. And this was a very interesting cartoon. The cartoon started off and saying that sometimes meatballs would fall out of the sky. And sometimes those meatballs would hit people on the head. And a very interesting thing would happen when a person got hit on the head by a meatball. He'd undergo a huge transformation, sometimes going from being a complete jerk to becoming a wise, compassionate, sincere person who worked wholeheartedly for the welfare of all beings and the salvation of all beings. They had this miraculous transformation after being hit on the head by a meatball. And people started to notice this, and people said, you know, I myself would like to get hit on the head by a meatball. That would really be good. Because these people who've been hit on the head by a meatball, they just turn into such wonderful people, and I myself would like that to happen to me. So many people start sitting outside waiting to get hit on the head by a meatball. And in the last picture of this cartoon, it shows this field filled with people sitting out in the field waiting to get hit on the head by a meatball. And underneath the picture, R. Crumb writes, sorry, folks, meatball doesn't work that way. Anyway, I love that story. I've told it too many times. But there's another Zen story. This one about Garrison Keillor. He used to be on Minnesota Public Radio, or National Public Radio, with the Prairie Home Companion. And he would tell very interesting stories. He was really a good storyteller, and he'd tell really great stories. And this story was about Zen baseball. And this is a very short story, but he would say, Zen baseball is different from regular baseball. In regular baseball, when you come up to bat, you try to get a hit. But in Zen baseball, it's not like that. In Zen baseball, you're not concerned with whether you get a hit or not. In Zen baseball, you try to live out the state of at-batness. That's Zen baseball. So anyway, I used to like Garrison Keillor on his show. He's no longer on the air. He got in some trouble, I guess, but he was a very funny guy. I used to really like hearing his stories. I used to wish I could tell stories like him. He just, each week he'd come up with this amazing, fresh, brilliant story that was not only witty and clever, but it also had deep compassion for the human situation. They were very deep and profound stories. And, I miss hearing those. But anyway, that was one of his memorable stories about Zen baseball. And I used to have a friend when I was working down at the hospital. His name was Bob. And my friend Bob was a very devout Christian. And he used to say to me, he when he found out I was a Buddhist, he used to say to me, you know, Norm, because you're a Buddhist, you're going to roast in hell, he would say to me. But I never get mad at him for saying that, because he would always say it in such a warm-hearted way, and he would say it with such a big smile on his face. And he would say to me, after we die, this is how it's going to be. You, of course, will be down in hell getting roasted alive and having boiling oil dumped on you and being tortured in unimaginably brutal ways by Satan and his henchmen. This is how it'll end up for you. But then you'll hear a voice way off in the distance. And it will be me, Bob, calling down from my heavenly abode. And you'll hear me saying, Norm, I told you so. So this is my friend Bob. He's a very funny guy. And I used to really enjoy his witticisms. So he loved nothing better than making me the butt of his witticisms. But one time he asked me, well, what do you do when you do Zazen? And I wanted to give a simple explanation. I said, well, you sit down, sit up straight, look at the wall, and follow your breathing and pay attention to your posture. He looked at me. He said, that's it? He said, what? He said, what use is that? He said. He looked at me, gave a very strange expression on his face. And then he said, when you were in elementary school, were you the class dunce? He said. So anyway, these are stories that I've dredged up that point to the uselessness of Zen meditation and Zazen. So, well, there's a little more I could have said, but it's getting pretty late in the day. So, do any of you have any questions or comments about anything I've said so far? Yes,
It's interesting. You did bring up this topic. It's not your main topic, but I'm going to bring up this word reality.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I can.
I'm going to bring up this word reality. Because I remember it could be 30 years ago when you and I were talking, and I've been struggling with this problem for all these years in one way or another, this word reality. And maybe I told you I was working on one of Schwab's books, and maybe I said something like, I want to do this with small r reality and capital R reality. And by the way, over the years, I find very few books that do it, almost none that have a small r. I've got a big library, and but you said, boy, I remember it vividly. You said, Roger, there's one reality.
Yeah.
And you said that again today.
Yeah.
But there's this, and I understand it sort of intellectually, but still there's this functioning problem. Like, for example, most of us through the day are in this other thing, I don't know what to call it, the delusion world.
Yeah.
And so I understand what you're saying, but I still struggle, particularly in the matter of publishing a book. And I wrote this up with Schwab at some point, not so long ago, down at Rio Muncie, a couple of years back, because I kept working on the manuscript. And I said to Garrison Keillor, and the way I would like to do this book is there's a few words, and one of them is reality. There's a small r for everyday reality. And anyhow, he just laughed. He's quick to make jokes. And he said, well, if you're still around when that book's go to the publisher, you argue it out with them. I know what you mean, but so anyhow, I guess I'm just asking what Do you have a word for my everyday delusionary life?
Well, we can call it small R reality,
Okay.
but small R reality and big R reality are not two different realities.
Okay.
And, this world is seemingly this world of this and that, and the next thing, the seemingly everyday reality is all manifestation of this big R reality. And big R reality completely expresses itself through each seemingly separate thing. You can't really find a separation between the two realities. But yet, in order to talk about our life, how it appears, and how we think about it, and talk about it in a conventional sense, we have to talk about things in terms of conventional appearances and in terms of the usual definitions of things and in terms of our conventional language in order to function in this seemingly dualistic conventional reality. We have to speak in these ways, and but it becomes clear when we can see that it's all a manifestation of big R reality, and that you can't really say they're the same or that they're different. We don't cling to either idea. We don't cling to our ideas about big R reality. We don't cling to our ideas about little R reality. Just be awake to reality without clinging to our ideas, just seeing the ideas as pointers to help us realize what our life is, but not clinging to the belief, yes, these ideas exactly describe what my life is. If we're trying to understand our life through our ideas, we'll never understand it. How we truly understand our life is just living out directly experienced here now reality. That's how we really understand it, without trying to package it into our ideas, without trying to see it objectively or, but that's where we always go. We want to understand it objectively or grasp it conceptually. And we overlook the actual direct experience, which is just this here now reality. We can't, whatever we say about it doesn't completely say it. You can't ultimately separate out little R reality from big R reality. And what I just said, don't believe it. They're just words, they're just pointers. So anyway, that's Fukan Zazengi you're working on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. His commentary on it. Yeah, yeah. I'd like to see that when he does come out.
Well, I don't know where it is, but I'll print up a copy of the manuscript as I did.
Yep, I do have a copy of that. I do have a copy of that.
Well, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your question. And don't believe what I say, please. Oh, hi, David.
Time in Lake Wobegon, the Garrison Keillor's town. One time in Lake Wobegon, Garrison Keillor's town, the Lutheran pastor went to a big convention of other Lutheran pastors where they were selling aids for churches. And among them was a biofeedback system where you could put electrodes on yourself and as you sat in the pew and give feedback to the pastor as he preached his sermon so he would know how he's coming across. I always thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that is pretty good. That's very clever. He's a very clever man. Yeah, that might be discouraging, though. I think if I knew what everybody was thinking or what their response was, I might get very discouraged.
It might work out that way.
And yeah, that would make it very threatening for me. But thank you for letting me know that. Well, thank you very much for coming today.